to understand why, I'm joined by two people. First of all, Professor Amanda Gouws, there she is, from Stellenbosch University in our Cape Town studios. Hello to you, Professor, and also taking part in the conversation. And to wrap up the voter registration drive is the CEO, the big cheese of the IEC, Mr. Sai Mamabolo. Professor, good evening to you. I'll come down to you in Cape Town in just a moment. First, Mr. Mamabolo, good evening to you.
Good evening, thank you.
Calm before the storm, you're looking relaxed. This won't last long, I'm sure. How was the registration weekend?
Very successful. We are happy that the logistical plans that we had put held up. The training of our staff gave us a good service. Cooperation with political parties, all tops. Yes, indeed, there were incidents of disruption yesterday, less than 1%. And we recovered quite well this morning. Most of those stations that did not operate yesterday did in fact operate today. And we want to thank community leaders, leaders of political parties for the interventions that they've made. Overall, we are very happy. We will now proceed to analyze and process the data, and we should be able to have a report for the country on Tuesday.
Any preliminary numbers coming through? I know you'll give a final report, and you said Tuesday. We'll speak to you then. But any preliminary numbers? Are we up on 5 years ago?
We should be. But again, I do not wish to speculate at this point. Let's wait for the processed data, and once we have it, we'll take the country into confidence.
I'm sure the country is looking forward to it. Professor Gouws, let's come down to you from Stellenbosch University in Cape Town. The IEC, it seems logistically, are happy with how it's worked out. The youth, it seems, Professor, which is why we're talking to you, don't really seem to care about logistics and political parties. Why is that?
Well, if we look at the statistics, and this is now before this weekend, there are 4.5 million people who are not registered, and 1/3 in the category between 15 and 18, and 1/3 in the category between 18 and 24. So it seems like there is no or very little interest in voting. And I think part of the issue is that the youth, they're born free, they don't relate to the struggle history as the older generations, and they don't have trust in the political parties. And I think if we look at the commissions of the past week, you know, the revelations of the corruption and the depth of the corruption in what can be considered the ruling party, then, you know, they are not attracted to the ANC either. So and I think, you know, parties don't offer what they want, and I think that's part of the problem, is that they don't see an alternative.
Professor, let me stay with you for a moment. So if they don't see an alternative at all, they'd rather just stay away. They're just going to show complete apathy. They don't understand why they should be voting. Are they not interested in finding out? Or do they know according to their Gen Y understanding and just simply aren't interested in supporting someone?
Well, I'm not sure if it's complete apathy, but I also think, like I said, they don't see alternatives or parties offering them anything. And if we look at the Ipsos press release, it seems that a large percentage of those youth who are not registered are in the low socioeconomic class. So they may be disaffected. And then I also think there's a huge problem with what we can call civic education in schools. You know, our students or pupils really taught about what democracy should be, what the importance of the vote is, why we should vote. And I think the youth is also influenced by social media, so they talk to each other. It's a self-select audiences that talk to each other, and maybe, you know, in those conversations, they don't encourage each other to vote. So I think that in a large extent we should also look at why are they disaffected.
Professor, I'll come back down to you in a moment. The CEO of the IEC, Mr. Mamabolo, you've been listening to what Professor has said about how the youth seemingly can't find an alternative, so they're not interested in voting at all. Is that your problem, or is that the political party's problem? The IEC obviously wants more people to come vote, but is there really anything you can do as the IEC?
Look, if it is so, it's a problem of our democracy. And to the extent that it's a problem of our democracy, it affects all of us because the health status of our democracy is dependent on the extent to which people participate, especially the young. However, there are certain things that need to be mentioned. Firstly, if you look at the campaign that we ran, XM, it was targeted at young people. It was energized, contemporary, and so on. And it had a clear bias towards social media, precisely because young people converse on social media. So we got into a conversation with them on social media, and that for us was an important thing. We will release the results, as I indicated, on Tuesday, and we are hopeful that the new registrations will be that of young persons in huge proportions, because that is what the country really needs.
Professor Gouws, is this simply a case of there are no young, cool, hip, up-and-coming politicians to vote for? No one's cool enough for the youngsters?
Well, I think that may be the case. But one needs to understand what it is that they look for in a leader, in a political leader. And I think, you know, the EFF has a populist message, but that message doesn't really necessarily appeal to everyone. So I think that we are not grooming political leaders, young leaders, and specifically women. I think it's important that young people should also see women political leaders in that age category. And you know, I just think they want a woke, what they call a woke political leader. And I'm not sure that the parties are providing them with that.
The IEC drive, this AXE, Mr. Mamabolo, give me a sense of where that came from. Where did the research come from? And I ask this only because the Daily Maverick are reporting that up to this last weekend, the 26th, 27th, IEC stats showing 16% of 18 and 19-year-olds were eligible to vote, who have now registered. I know the official numbers are coming out on Tuesday. This is preliminary from a few days ago. And 54% of 20 to 29-year-olds. There's really just a small margin between those two audiences that you're trying to target. Where did the thinking come from? Take me through the think tank behind hashtag AXE.
The idea of the concept is located in the research done, which indicated precisely the statistics that you are outlining. So this was an endeavor to reverse that trend. And we hope that when we outline the results on Tuesday, a significant reduction in the missing numbers will be shown. So XA really was a response, not necessarily to an apathy of the youth, but really it was an endeavor to get into a conversation with young persons on social media in the language in which they use in their normal course of life on a daily basis.
Professor Gouws, I know you said earlier it's not youth voter apathy. Do you think perhaps it's youth voter anger? We saw the students and fees must fall protests all those years ago. Students were seeing their classmates being locked up and tear-gassed on national television. Is it more anger than apathy, and they're just kicking out and deciding they're not going to play with?
Well, I think there is a lot of anger, and there was a lot of anger in 2015 and 2016. But I mean, if you're angry, then you should use your vote to indicate that, you know, what it is that you want, and vote for the party that can provide something, or vote against the party. And it brings me back to the point I've been making, that that young people just don't see an alternative among all the parties.
From your perspective, is any of the parties getting that youth message even somewhat right? Well,
you know, we haven't seen all the party manifestos read yet. And also, I think in terms of the media campaigns, it's really very silent. And, you know, I think if we look at the social problems, the youth wanted free education, right? So what are these messages? If parties are actually campaigning against other parties, right, saying keep this party out, keep that party out, but not giving us policy platforms to look at what the parties can actually offer. So what is it that the youth can use to make decisions? I mean, the youth are not, they're not going to read these very lengthy party manifestos. They want sound bites. They want something that they can relate to, and I'm not sure the parties are giving them that.
They want a 30-second Instagram video. Professor Amanda Gouws from Stellenbosch University, I'm going to say thank you to you for the moment. I appreciate your time in coming to speak to us. And I think Professor Gouws, Mr. Mamabolo, is spot on that the messaging from the political parties is very different to what the IEC has come out. You've deliberately targeted that youth vote, and you've spoken to the youth, and no doubts, perhaps you and I speaking this evening, we're going to hear from the youth across those social media channels about how they've missed the registration weekend. I'm sorry, I forgot to do my homework. Can I please come vote now? I'd like to do it. It's suddenly very cool. Is this the last weekend? That's it. No more chances. It's all done.
It is the last weekend where we go into communities and open voting stations. But from tomorrow, the offices of the municipal electoral officers, which are located within municipal buildings largely, persons can go between 8 and 5 to register themselves.
Is that from tomorrow?
From tomorrow until the day on which the president formally proclaims the election date.
Any idea when that is yet?
We don't know when that would be, but hopefully the president will, in the not too distant future, announce the date.
All right, so basically, if you haven't had a chance to register on this registration weekend campaign, you still might have some time, depending when the president comes out to announce that. Mr. Mamabolo, thank you very much for coming in to speak to us. It's Sai Mamabolo, the CEO of the IEC, joining us here on Newsline as we head